esteemed professionals, and fellow colleagues. I extend a cordial welcome to the illustrious assembly gathered here for the Global Professional Accountants Convention, GLOPAC, meticulously orchestrated by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Discourse of the hour, leveraging global opportunities, etiquette, communication, and legal insights signifies a profound exploration in the sophisticated realm of international business. This advanced session, curated for discerning professionals, aims to furnish attendees with the acumen and expertise necessary to flourish in today's diverse corporate milieu. By elucidating key legal insights and imparting subtle communication strategies, participants will be equipped to navigate cultural nuances adeptly. The session seeks to empower professionals to forge seamless business interactions across the borders, fostering a heightened understanding of global etiquette and communication subtleties. Without extended preamble and with great honor and anticipation, I kindly request our respected CCM ICAI CAP Rajendra Kumar, our distinguished panelist, Mr. Nat Vora, Dr. Vikas S. Chaturvedi, Mr. Sunil Deshmukh, our eminent moderator of the session, CA Vandana Saxena Poria, to graciously take the dais. As we look forward to a discourse enriched by your wealth of knowledge and experience, I'm confident that your presence on the dais will illuminate our discussions and contribute significantly to the collective learning of our esteemed audience. I humbly take an opportunity to briefly introduce our dignitaries on the dais. CAP Rajendra Kumar, honored professional, is a Central Council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for the term 2022 to 25. Eminent moderator of the session, CA Vandana Saxena Poria. She is an OB and strategic advisor from ICAEW. Esteemed panelists, Mr. Sunil Deshmukh is a global chair-elect of IMA-USA for the term 2023-24. Dr. Vikas S. Chaturvedi is a founder of Valuecent Group. Mr. Nat Vora is founder and chief executive officer of StrategiX Advisors from Oman. I humbly request CAP Rajendra Kumar to set the session of our most awaited discourse with his opening remarks.
Esteemed panelists seated on the dais, very esteemed delegates who have come for this historical GLOPAC in the city of Ahmedabad in Gujarat, the delegates who have come from abroad, the chairmen of various branches who are seated here, and distinguished audience that you are. This is a post-lunch session, and I do understand that some of us may be in for a siesta here. But then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very confident that the panelists that is seated before us are going to share with us insights which are going to lead us cross borders. In fact, I don't know the reason why I'm here, but when I was exploring the reasons, one reason that stood out is that as a person who has traveled about 30 countries of this world, maybe this session is for me also. Etiquette, communication, and legal insights. When we go abroad, even for tourism purposes, even for tourism purposes, our travel agent tells us the do's and don'ts. So when we are exploring opportunities for business, when we want to go global, these very, very important requirements becomes necessities. Before coming on to the dais, I was sharing with the honorable moderator and others that in some countries, how you sit matters. In some countries, the direction in which the chair is kept matters. And in some countries, the way you speak, your decibels matters. In fact, when I was traveling in Switzerland, even in the trains, you will never hear one single voice aloud. But just opposite of that, when you travel in Italy, it's like India. You have loud laughter, open-hearted discussions. Cross-border is not about crossing borders. It is about building bridges where basic etiquettes of a firm handshake also sometimes matters. What you dress for an event, whether it is a party. Yesterday, you would have found some of us council colleagues sitting in a suit in a music and dance session. Well, that is not the etiquette for a party. That's not an etiquette for a music session, you see. But then, fortunately or unfortunately, we are being here since morning, so we had no time to go to a hotel and change. But then some of you, I could find, were in your most fashionable attire. They dress for the occasion. But these are certain basics which you need to follow if you have to gel with the crowd. Otherwise, you'll be different. Yes, in business, you need to be different. But then, you need to gel with the person with whom you're doing business. Of course, communication, the internet, the technological revolution has made a lot of things come to our doorstep. But then mere sitting before computer doesn't help. You need to travel. Someone asked me a question, what I should do to go global. I said you should invest 10 years of your prime life by just visiting countries. Whether it is China, Japan, or it is USA, which is very informal. You need to know what each and every country offers to you, how you matter to them, and how they will matter to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very efficient, erudite, and expert faculties who will take us through this session. Let us sit back, and like all of you, I would also like to listen to them and take home important points for our future growth and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajendra ji. Really appreciated your opening remarks. Loved your comment. Oh, sorry. Am I allowed to start?
Yes. Please. That is what I was supposed to. You may please. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. I loved your comment, especially the one where it's not about crossing border, but it's about building bridges. And these three gentlemen in the middle and Rajendra ji have spent their lives doing that, really. So first of all, a quick introduction. We have a slide up there so you can connect with all of us on LinkedIn. My name is Vandana Saxena Poria. I am an ICAEW chartered accountant from England and Wales. And we are also in the pavilion, so do come and see us. I moved to India 18 years ago. And before that, I was in Eastern Europe for 10 years. So I left the UK when I was 25. And my experience in Central and Eastern Europe taught me a lot. And speaking to the wonderful gentlemen that I have to my right, they're going to be sharing stories very similar to what I went through. It's also worth mentioning I sold my first company when I was 27. And my 18 years in India, I've also sold another company. So plenty of experience with myself and with all of us on this stage. I think it's worth saying as well, when I moved to India, which was 2005, I think it was 2006 that Genpact was born. And Genpact was one of the companies on this stage this morning. And during that period, they've grown into a multi-billion-dollar company. Now is the time for the SMPs. It's time for the SMPs to grow at the rate. Maybe years ago it was not possible, but because of what's going on in the world today, it is going to be possible for all of you. And we're really hoping that the panel today is going to give you ideas of how to do that successfully and agilely. Tax and audit are what has made you who you are today. But that's not going to be enough to take you into the global world. What you're going to need to do is develop other skills. So you're going to have to go from being compliance-centered to being client-centered with speed. And the ones amongst you that are willing to build the other skills and be agile are going to be the winners of the next decade and the next century, and take India to not just a $4 trillion economy, but to much, much more. So I would like to welcome my wonderful esteemed panel. Very briefly, I'm just going to tell you that Sunil, who's on my right, is the global chair of IMA. And he's also got experience from Africa, the Middle East, and Singapore. I've got Vikas in the middle, who's the CEO of Valuecent. He is chair of ICAI in the Netherlands and is based in the Netherlands. And I also have Nat, who is the CEO and founder of StrategiX Advisors. And he has many, many years of experience in the Middle East and in Canada. And between us all on this stage, we have 105 years of experience. And that's what we're going to be sharing with you. So talking about global, we're going to start with the bigger picture before we move to the micro. And I'd like to start with Sunil, actually. We're going global, India's going global, we're connected intimately with the rest of the world now. What emerging trends do you see in terms of international collaboration? And how can businesses here in India, our SMPs here, how can they capitalize on those trends?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Vandana. Before I start talking, all of you are just come out of your lunch and you're all tired. And as a common sense, I just want to ask you one question. You have to respond to me, right? Are you ready? How is the Josh? How is the Josh? How is the Josh? Thank you very much for warming up yourself as well as ourselves. So globalization is a very difficult and complex topic. What is very important in a globalization is how do you make sense of things, what's happening around you? In this uncertain world, there are a lot of things happening very rapidly without our knowledge. And change is one thing which you all have to adopt very quickly. And if you do not adopt to the change very quickly, you know what is likely to happen to you. I'll give you a small example. If you're a trekker and you're gone for trekking, when you go for a trekking, you have all the instruments with you, your GPRS, your all the tools and techniques, and you're an expert trekker, and you start trekking, you climb up, and let's say you go 5,000 meters on the height, and suddenly weather changes. And no instrument which was available with you is working now. Bad weather, everything stops working. Your GPR is not working. Your satellite phone is not working. Nothing is working. What do you do at that point of time? And that's what I call sense making. You have to make sense of what's happening around you, and you have to take a call how to survive that situation and come out of that situation. I'll give you a very small example. when McDonald's came to India in mid-90s, McDonald's introduced vegetarian burger, McVeggie, right? Or McAloo Tikki. That's common sense. But a common sense in an uncommon degree is what called a wisdom. A common sense to an uncommon degree is called wisdom. And what McDonald's did differently is that they introduced the kitchen, which is vegetarian kitchen. So they segregated the kitchen between vegetarian kitchen and non-vegetarian kitchen. So this is sense making. So you as a finance leaders, you as a corporate leaders, you have to continuously make sense of what's happening around you. You have to change your strategies. You have to be agile. You have to be flexible. And when you work in a global scenario, this is likely to happen very often. So are you prepared to be agile and to be ready to make sense of things? And sense making can happen through data, through information, through analysis. But a lot of time we do sense making through intuition. And intuition-based sense making and data-based sense making are two different things. But as a leader, many times you may not have time to analyze the data and take the decisions. And that's what happened during COVID-19 lockdown. Very few companies were able to change their working style, work from home and all those things. So agility is very important. And I think these are the 2-3 important aspects of corporate sense making, that you have to continuously make sense of what's happening around you, interpret that information and data to your use,
Right.
make the changes in your life and move ahead. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. So really sense making is very important, making sense of the environment that your new clients are operating in. You may understand your tax and law, but do you understand what's going on with them? Use the data and use your intuition as well. Vikas, when we were talking earlier, you also talked about looking at patterns. Can you explain what that's about?
So what is happening, as all of us are witnessing, friends, that there is a global shift because of this whole geopolitical gear change, where companies in the West are looking for more strong and more trusted partner. So now in past, we have seen, obviously, China has that advantage because the whole ecosystem in China has been way ahead of where India is today. But because of this last 3-4 years dynamics, what has emerged in the world today, we clearly are seeing that companies are looking at India. And companies of all the types, you take manufacturing companies, you take companies which are into services business, IT businesses, they're all looking at India. So while most of you are SMPs here, most of the chartered accountants in this country form a very strong block of SMP. So I could clearly see the new pattern that is being evolved is one where opportunities with respect to doing business in India will immensely open for chartered accountants. Opportunities with respect to company helping setting up, companies helping compliances, company doing the audits for SMPs will immensely increase because of this new trend. So to all of you, my message is keep very strong eye on which sectors, which countries are really going global. So if you look at companies from US, they are again back into action. You see companies from Europe, countries specifically like Germany, Netherlands, France, they're back in action. So again, all looking at India big time, especially because of this whole T1 strategy that is happening globally. India has hit the nail. So friends, this is our time. This is India's time. And this is the time of SMPs from India looking at these new trends from my side.
Okay, great. So we're seeing patterns emerging, and we're seeing, as you said, patterns emerging in, for example, ESG and social audits. That's becoming very popular. And of course, the basic bookkeeping and accounting is popular, but there are other service lines that are popular as well. And we'll talk, do you want to mention just a couple of them?
So certainly what is happening now when we see this pattern. So in this whole pattern, we need to have a horizontal and vertical approach. So what are the sectors that we are looking at? So that's a horizontal approach. But then what are the domains of knowledge where the action is happening today? So a lot is being discussed about ESG. So the European Union has come out with a law where they have made it compulsory for companies to have the ESG governance and the ESG compliances. So today, if you are an Indian company, so again, this is a message to SMPs who has companies, who have clients who are doing business outside India. So when you go to a client, you can clearly tell them that, friends, when you're doing business outside India, be mindful of ESG guideline, be mindful of a GDPR regulation. So this is something which is the law, which is already coming in the West big time. And that is where if you already have a knowledge, getting the work, the business from clients becomes so much easier for you guys. Because when you go to clients, it's very important to show that you are really connected in the whole global system. Because today we cannot talk and look at Indian chartered accountants only in isolation of who you are and that you're living in silos. So today you have to be a global citizen, because if you have to capture the wave of opportunities that is coming from Europe and US to India, or to capture the opportunities that are going out from India to Europe, US, Australia, you have to be on the top of the game.
Great, thank you. And those of you who are interested in ESG, there is another session tomorrow that's being moderated by John Bolton from ICAEW, which is going to be talking about ESG and the opportunities for chartered accountants. Okay, Nat, I want to ask you a little bit about global strategy and what you have to say about the trends that are happening and what people need to do.
So, hello, everybody here. You know, one of the things as accountants and corporate citizens or our own businesses, risk management is a big area for us. And a part of that is preparing and planning for the risks so you can manage them well by using different strategies. Now, some people are going to say, you know, what about things like COVID? How am I going to predict that? How am I going to predict that Ukraine's going to go or Russia's going to go to war with Ukraine, or what's happening in the Middle East is going to happen? Well, you cannot predict specific events, otherwise you'd be Nostradamus. But what you can do is, we do know there will be volatility. We do know there will be events in the world. You know, I was at another panel a month back. The biggest concern for treasury managers and CFOs was the rising interest costs and the inflation. What we can do is, generally, if you look at the patterns of business of how commodity prices go, how interest rates have been, then we can safely plan for it and say, look, this kind of things do happen, and we need to plan for that. So if the interest rates are going to go haywire, and it's never happened the way it has in the recent past, but if you were prepared, you might not take the same hit as you would. So preparing and planning is quite important, especially when you're going in for geographical diversification. You're trying to build a bridge with another country or try to ply your trade there. If you do not understand the local politics, you do not understand what is happening in the region, then you're going to have a problem, because you haven't taken care of your risk and managed it well enough to know what happens. What do you do? How do you act when a certain event occurs? Or you could have, taken other risk mitigation strategies to keep it in that realm. So I think preparing and planning is something I would say is important, not only locally as you go outside, but especially for global connections, because then the geographies start mattering, where you are, what's going on, how to react to it.
Thank you. So risk mitigation. So don't just think about winning the client, but also think about the environment that they're operating in and what challenges could come up because of that. All right, let's move on to a really important area, and that is thinking about etiquette. And I really want you to talk about your experiences in the countries that you've lived in and others that you've traveled to. Vikas, I'd like to start with you and think about the Netherlands. What are the key considerations that professionals over here need to think about when they approach a country like the Netherlands?
So a couple of things when you're looking at a country like Netherlands. One, you have to be always straight when you're talking to Dutch people, in the sense, while we Indians are straight, but sometimes we really don't give a clear answer. So when I say straight, so when you're starting communication with the Dutch companies to take a business or to build a partnerships, it's very important that the whole communication should be very clear, very straight, clearly mention what is it that you want, and be very prompt. So most of the times what happens is inordinate delay in response. We think sab chalta hai, that kind of attitude unfortunately does not works there. So if you're not responding well on time, if you're not very proactively notifying them as to what the next process is. So I'll give you an example. When Dutch companies are doing business in India, they expect an upfront planned steps on how to help a company set up in India. Now, I know chartered accountants which will say, yeah, this is the standard 5 pointers that you need to set up a company, and then that is it. But that is not sufficient. At the first time itself, you have to tell them if a document is coming in, it should be notarized, it should be apostilled, this is the process, this is step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, because if you don't tell them an advanced upfront structure, they think, look, we don't feel comfortable. And likewise, in the communication, if they ask you yes or no, we have to say yes or no. Maybe it does not work. Okay, because some of the times we have the intention, okay, we don't want to piss them off, but at the same time, we don't want to lose the business. We say, okay, we'll come back, we will think, we'll come back, we will think. But then if we do 2-3 times, this kind of, let's say, etiquette, let's say, of communication, one thing is very clear, but then they have already made up their mind. So some of the things, be on time with these people. When they say the meeting starts at 3, it really means 3. It does not mean 3:15, 3:30, because then they feel that you don't respect sufficiently their culture or their timing. So, I mean, examples like this, I can give numerous, but these were 2 particular, which I wanted to mention.
Fundamentally, it's all about trust. It's all about building the trust. And especially in Europe, I mean, having been born and brought up there as well, it is about delivering on what you say, and giving a bit more information than you would normally than you would normally do, perhaps to clients over here who are kind of familiar with you and familiar with your style. It's going to be really important to be very open.
Yeah. So adding just onto that, trust is very, very important. Like we Indians make friends very, very quickly. You meet any Indian in any part of the world, in initial 5 minutes, you become a friend of other guy. You start with G, you start with Bhai, you start with Bhai Sahab. Some of the titles we start and we form a relationship as if we knew the person for last 10, 20 years. And because of that framework in our mind, we apply the same to, let's say, in the West. And it does not work like that because they are not your Bhai Sahab. They don't know what Bhai means and, all those kind of things. So the structural element needs to be changed where we believe that, build a trust, and it takes time. So you have to be patient. You don't have to answer that. You don't have to believe that if once meeting has taken place, the next day you will get a business. Because some of the chartered accountants, what I've seen is they send emails and then they expect, look, we have had a good meeting. We immediately get that business.
Great.
Invest your time.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Great point there. And that really helps us understand the Netherlands and Europe, really. Nat, can you give us some examples? I mean, you lived in Canada for many years. Do you want to give us some examples from Canada and the US and how different that is?
So one of the things about Canada and US is the Canadians have a little bit of the American in them and a lot of the British in them. And most meetings are conducted in a more formal manner. There's an agenda, there would be planning. In the US, all that will be there, but they're a little more casual in their attitude when it comes to, no problem, we'll get it done in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. In Canada, it'll work sometimes, but not always. Like he was talking about Netherlands, I'll tell you about Germany. If you don't have a precise plan with the timelines there, they don't think you're serious enough to be able to work with them. You're done. Some other examples I can give you of customs and etiquettes work like in China, right? China, the business meetings are formal. But when you go, they don't like business lunches. They prefer business dinners. And these are quite, if you've never done it before, it's going to stun you how they deal with it and the way the food is ordered and the way the drinks are ordered. And you got to play with that, right? You can't be very formal when it comes to that. They all order stuff and they eat from the same dish, not from the same dish, but you pick up as you go along, and it's the same chopsticks that you would use there, right? They would really love it if you knew how to eat with chopsticks. If you ask for a fork and spoon in a Chinese restaurant, and I have a slight problem, The same thing would apply, let's say, Britain. You're having a meeting in Britain, right? The way the British talk.
Be very careful what you say now.
Yeah, I know it.
I'm joking.
So it's, you got to read between the lines. When they say X, it doesn't always mean X, my friend. It means X minus 3, maybe. I don't know. There's no formula as such, but it is read between the lines. They would be the sweetest human beings on your face. That's because they don't know how to be impolite. That's all it is. It's not anything else. But you need to know these things, right? You don't want to go and make commitments about something and get excited while find out that actually they said everything's fine, hunky-dory, and next day you get a message that, unfortunately, our committee's decided we don't want to do business. That's possible.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant, Nat. I think you nailed it actually with those different examples. Sunil, I'm going to ask you something slightly different. It's not going to be about a particular country, but you've got a lot of experience with joint ventures. And what I think would be really good for the audience is many of you will be thinking about tying up with firms in different countries. What are the things that they need to think about when it comes to joint ventures then?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, most of the experience happened in joint venture companies all over the world. And you may know that 1/3 of the joint ventures, mergers, and acquisitions in the world, they fail because of the cultural issues. And I can give many examples. Classic example is Amazon and Whole Foods. Then you have, of course, the famous AOL and Time Warner. And my friend is sitting here from HP, but I'm still giving that example, HP and Compaq. Most of these acquisition, joint ventures, mergers, they failed because of the cultural compatibility. And if there is no cultural compatibility, you may have fantastic business proposition, you may have return on investment, you may have market, but if people are not able to work together, no joint venture or any sort of collaboration is going to work. You know the famous word given by Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is that important. And please remember that culture is your behavior, your etiquettes, your walk the talk, how you say something and how you do something. It's not the my way or a highway, right? Culture is a very delicate matter which you should be knowing very well. Cultural awareness is not synonymous with the global mindset. Please remember that. Cultural awareness and global mindset are two different things. Many people or many companies with whom I work, they said, oh, we have global mindset. Why it's not working? It's not your mindset, it's the culture. So you need to understand that cultural diversity is not going to change. Today, you may work with an American client. Today, you may work with a European client. But what food you eat and what food that client eats in their respective country is going to be different. So you have to understand the nuances of the cultural competence. And there are many examples which I would not name the company, but because of the human ego, the ego comes in the joint venture or collaboration agreements, and ego breaks the all walls which is supposed to be built on a basis of trust and sympathy. So, human have three types of ego: child ego, adult ego, and super ego. I'm not going to define all these egos, but culture plays a very, very important role in any sort of relationship to create a trust and continue that trust forever.
Brilliant
Can
point.
I add one example to that? Sorry for the
Very
joint venture.
quickly, yeah.
So one of the most famous examples that most people don't know about is the merger between Boeing and McDonnell Douglas. Boeing's value culture was quality, 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 quality. And McDonnell Douglas culture was value to the shareholders, increase in shareholder value. When the merger happened, the CEO of Boeing was still in place. But pretty quickly, the CEO from McDonnell Douglas took over and the entire culture of the company changed. If you see a pattern in the number of accidents and safety related incidents and engineering incidents that Boeing has had since 787, 7378 MAX, this would never happen in a Boeing, but it is happening because the whole culture has changed. It was about Airbus has come out with 321. We need to do this now. No extensions. And that's what sometimes drove the engineers who were used to quality crazy. And then we end up having incidents like we do. Unfortunately, even the culture of being transparent has changed within Boeing now. There are a lot of things Boeing knows but they compare it in value of money. Oh, I could pay $1 billion in court cases and I'd be fine. That would never happen at a Boeing. But this is the difference. So like he mentioned, the culture of a company becomes very important. Who are you tying up with? And when you're trying to tie up two entities in that marriage, which are the qualities that can be compromised and which are the qualities that should not be compromised? Thank you.
So two really important points coming out. Depending on which country you're going to, do your homework. They won't be the same. So even if you're looking at two countries which are next door to each other, like Germany and France, for example, they are not going to have the same culture. You need to understand each of their cultures. In addition to that, you need to understand the internal culture of the organization. As Nat said, are they quality driven? Are they more hierarchical and risk mitigation driven? You need to really understand what is it that makes that company that company. So two separate pieces of work you need to do to prepare yourself to ensure that when you go in, you can show them who you are too. So what is your culture? What is it that you value? Is it price, for example? Are you competing on we are the cheapest? Or are you competing on we are not going to be the cheapest, but we are going to deliver you quality? So those are things that you need to think about, as well as what is the culture of a particular company and country. All right, great. I'm going to move on to virtual communication now, because we've talked a little bit about the communication with the company, and I think we got some really great examples of which countries need direct communication and which countries perhaps prefer a bit more indirect. But virtual communication is important. And Sunil, I'd like to just get you to talk a little bit about how people need to be and what they need to be cognizant of in virtual communication. Many people here may do the first meeting with a new client online, or they may have met them at an event like a GloPack and then go back to being online. What should they be cognizant of?
Yeah, thank you, Vandana. It's an interesting scenario which has been developed over the last 3 years. Means, of course, we have been virtually communicating for a long time. But before I get into that, what I would like to also tell you that when we communicate, 55% of your communication is through your tonal communication, is through your language, what you speak. But 45% of communication is your body language. Now, problem in virtual communication, body language is disappeared today. So when we were meeting each other and talking to each other, we make sense of body language of each other and understand what that person is speaking or what he would like to speak. But because of the new technology now, the virtual communication has made it very, very difficult to understand the body language. There are netiquettes, like you have etiquettes, now you have netiquettes. On the net, when you're on a Wi-Fi, when you're on email, when you're on a Zoom call, Teams call, or whatever it is, what are the etiquettes that you should follow? What are the do's and do nots of the virtual communication? First, I will not tell everything, but I will cover 2-3 things. Very important is when you are having an important meeting. Now, I have seen people who appear for interview and do not put their video on. Can you imagine I'm selecting a chief financial officer and his video is switched off? Can't happen. So whenever any virtual communication, please ensure that your video is on. When you speak, your microphone should be on. Most of the people speak when their microphone is switched off. Then someone has to remind him, your microphone is not on, we can't listen you. Then he has to. So always remember when to switch on and switch off your microphone. Use language which is very simple and straightforward. Do not beat around the bush in a virtual communication. Respect the privacy of the people. Very important in a virtual communication. Whatever you speak in a virtual communication, that conversation is confidential, treat it like that. Do not try to put it on a social media like Facebook or Twitter. By the way, I had a meeting with this guy so and we agreed so and so, unless you take a permission from him. So these are very simple tips of communication and virtual communication. Do not use abbreviations. Many people write in a chat box and they put everything in a capital letters. Capital letters is arrogance. Yeah. Don't try to put everything in capital letters. Put your message very brief and small so that people understand. When you want to speak in a meeting, you can raise your hand, not physically, through the what do you call that? Emotigraph, or you can put right to speak, RTS, and then you speak. Don't speak simultaneously when someone is speaking and then you're also talking and no one is able to listen. So I think these are some of the tips as far as virtual communication are concerned. Netiquettes are very important.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think one of the biggest ones that I've seen is when people talk over each other. So just using that little hand icon to say that I want to say something is really useful because it helps the other person realize what's needed as well. Now, whilst virtual communication is a great new tool that we've developed, especially since COVID, there are some risks associated with that virtual communication that you should also be aware of. And Nat, do you want to just give one example quickly of,
Sure, but I
of that?
wanted to add something to what Sunil said in terms of, etiquette and etiquettes. One of the most important things is also remember the background noise. If you're doing a meeting from home, make sure you don't have a child crying or screaming at the back, or your cat walk across your screen, right? So that's happened to me. So that's one thing. About the dangers, right? We were not that used to virtual communication, but literally forced into it when COVID came because person-to-person meetings were off. Now, when such a thing happens, it happened very rapidly. There wasn't enough time for everybody to get trained. And actually, the older generation of accountants like me, how much inertia we have to change and new things. So we were not, some of us, after a virtual communication or transfer of data, we have a VPN line on and somebody forgot to switch off the VPN line. Now that leaves your server open to a outsider looking to get in, and that's what will trigger a ransomware attack. Because these are happening more and more. I have a real life example where this happened. 90% of things were happening online. People were sitting at home and entering data. So we had to give them access to the server. And one gentleman in the office forgot to switch off his VPN. And next day morning, we all came. We had no access to our server. Took us, luckily for us, we didn't end up being ransomware, because this is the other thing about preparing and planning, where we had adequately covered our backups and we had offsite backups as well. So it was only a week downtime, but this can become a disaster if it's not done well. So that's a very big danger that we need to take care of, right? Training is important.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we've looked at virtual communication. I want to just very briefly talk about legal considerations that you need to think about. If you're looking at going abroad and doing business abroad, you know your Indian law inside out. There's no doubt about that. But what are some of the key aspects, Vikas, first of all? I know you mentioned GDPR earlier, but what are the key aspects that people should be thinking about?
So when you're getting into any country outside India, what's very important is, especially when you're helping clients for establishing a joint venture or a company or a potential mergers and acquisition transaction, it's very, very vital that the country in which you are advising your client on, you get on board a partner in that local country and try to first understand what the basic law is with respect to setup of a company, in respect of how many directors should be there locally, how many shareholders are required, what is the requirement on address, what is the requirement on number of board meetings, and what are the compliances. Because generally, if you look at the Western countries, the element or the amount of compliances as such may be little as what we are used to of in India, but at least the important one cannot be missed at any cost. So as I mentioned last time, one such example is when you have a company, people think that they can manage that company outside India from sitting in India. Now, obviously in India, we have this POEM guidelines, place of effective management. But at the same time, even those countries have substance guidelines where they require a local director, where they require a local board meeting. Now, if you are not telling all those elements to clients, clients will say, look, because if my company overseas becomes a non-resident in that country, now who takes that penalty on the head? So likewise, there are so many legal, framework that you have to be very clear on in the beginning itself. So do not advise. So my advice to you, all of you SMPs here sitting here, chartered accountants, is don't advise in a hurry. Take your fair time to understand what that law is in that country. Be very familiar on the data rules, because today, if a company has and set up in Germany, now German company cannot send back its data to India because there is a GDPR regulation. It's a global data protection regulation. Now, if you're not aware of that, if you have not taken the right caveats to prevent it, immediately you are in the violation of that law. ESG, as I just some time back explaining. So you have to be very, very clear. And obviously, sitting in India, you cannot know everything. So my advice to all of you sitting here is, when you are advising clients which are going to legal country, be it Middle East, be it Europe, be it US, be very clear on the company incorporation setup procedure, on the legal rights in that company, the framework of the director's address, and any other law that may be applicable. For example, as you mentioned, GDPR and ESG, especially in the EU context.
Yeah, and like you said, if you can find someone from the other country to help advise you, because they're the ones that are going to know inside out. Nat, let me just go to you very quickly. Global capability centers. What else would you say about them and about legal considerations? You've advised a few of them. So what have you seen come up?
So basically, when you're dealing with another country, it's very important to understand some laws that are global laws, like the ESG laws, right? If you want to work with a European or an American country, you need to be aware that if you are not already on the path or have started the journey towards sustainability and have ESG guidelines in place, very soon in Europe, you're going to end up paying a 30% carbon tax because you don't comply with the regulations. So your product is not going to be that popular in that country if you haven't taken care of that. As the landscape evolves, the future of the world, and which will be led by the Middle East, is going to be renewables, renewable power, and a greater climate change agenda. The climate change agenda, even if there is no local regulations in India, is going to get pushed to you by your clients, by your stakeholders, by investors, and by foreign country regulations. If you're not aware of these things, you're going to suffer. You're not going to be able to do very good business outside. I was talking to somebody from BlackRock about a month back. And one clue I can give you is, if the simple line that that resonated with me was, if you haven't even started your just sustainable journey, we take your proposal
off the table.
Off the table completely. You know what that means, right? That's the dustbin.
Yeah.
If a company has started the journey at least and is moving along, we may consider investing. But if you've got advanced sustainable guidelines and reporting in place and you've taken serious measures to implement them, then you are a candidate that they're likely to consider more than anything else. So these are simple things. Tomorrow, one of your clients is in Europe. You need to export steel to him. If there is no sustainability and ESG agenda built into your manufacturing practices and how you do it, and your logistics even, well, you're going to pay the carbon tax. So these kind of things become important, right? We want to go global. Well, let's think global as well. And I found that in where I am in the GCC and in India, we lag behind in the sustainability agenda. We really need to understand we don't have to wait for the government to do it for us. Yeah. So we need to do it ourselves.
Thank you. I know that we've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left, and I really want to do a quick fire with the three of you. We've talked about many areas. We've talked about cultural competence. We've talked about legal considerations. We've talked about the etiquette. I want to know very quickly, and I want to start with Sunil very quickly. How have you built expertise in these areas? How can our audience here build up expertise? It's not the kind of thing you can just learn and put a switch? It's like a switch on off. What did you do?
There are many ways of doing that, but I would simply say that first is learn, unlearn, and relearn. You have to keep on continuously learning. That's number one. Number two, follow or use coaching-based leadership style. Identify your role models. Spend money on your education and your skill development. Nothing comes automatically in this world. And repeat the same thing again and again and again and again if you want to be successful in your journey.
I think that's great. One other question for you. In fact, all of our panel, and I'll come to each of you in turn. Each of you has got multiple qualifications. When it comes to cross-cultural, which qualification has helped you the most?
Yeah, thanks for asking this question, Vandana. Really, I did multiple qualifications, but what I was missing in my entire qualification was value-based leadership. And I went to Aspen in Colorado in America, and I did a complete course, 10 days, day in, day out, residential program on social leadership or value-based leadership. So you have to keep changing your learning requirements. And I always advise this, that please save money for your education. Please save your holidays for your education and not for buying an iPhone.
It's the biggest investment.
It's the biggest investment. You have to do it continuously, lifelong.
Okay, Vikas, same question. How have you built expertise in these areas?
So just to further add on what Sunilji has said, take one domain knowledge that you have to build, because today you cannot be jack of all. Focus one area. And for me, Vandana, that area was international tax. 2005, it was, early 2000, when outbound and inbound had started happening. And I saw this wave of global business happening in India. So I thought, why not focus on global tax? Because this would ride the new wave of business opportunities, and it will open a huge avenues for chartered accountants. So in 2005, for me, that was the starting point. And one degree which really helped me play that one was LLM. I did my LLM in international taxation from Netherlands after qualifying CA in 2002, and LLM I did in 2005. And it was just that domain that I have built in. And today, even today, I breathe in, breathe out only international tax. And hence I connect global businesses very easily, because for me, connecting businesses and thinking of tax nuances from the global structures is very easy.
Great.
And learning, unlearning, as he said, practicing it, and then don't get defocused, because the problem is we start when we're not getting too much quickly in career, we try to change jobs, we try to change domains.
Yep.
Don't do that, because if you're a master of one domain, friends, I can tell you, future belongs to you. But think of a future, think of a sector which is future oriented. So as Vandana started with, that audit and tax are important. Those are the foundation. So you have to, if you have to build a building, you have to really think of the future gen next sectors, build your domain, and just in 10 years, you will see the magic happening to all of you.
Great. So find that sunrise sector and really concentrate on that and invest in that. Nat.
So for me, the first rule is I'm not an expert. I learn every day. Every day I wake up, every person I meet, every place I go to, I learn something. So this constant learning is something that helps me to keep myself updated with many things, but I'm not an expert. The first thing I tell myself is that helps me learn. Number two, opposite to what Vikas said, I don't think focusing as a risk manager, focusing on one area. I tell everybody every day, diversify, whether it's geographical diversification, service lines diversification, or your knowledge diversification.
Yeah.
For me, I've always been a CFO, so I knew about treasury management, finance, I can do that. But 4 years back, when nobody in this area was talking about sustainability and ESG, I was working with European companies and American companies by purpose to learn on sustainability and ESG. Today, thank you. Today, that helps me. Actually, I go out and sometimes in Oman, at the risk of being proven wrong, which has not happened to date, I say that probably I bring more talent on ESG and sustainability to a client than even the big four, because the big four do not have the talent in this area. They are going to use rotational talent.
So
And why are they going to bring the most expensive market talent and sell it in a cheaper market like Oman or India or one of the other GCC countries where everything is about the money and not about value chain all the time? So you have to think like that. I don't have overheads and I don't need to make $1 million margins. So
that's an important point. Yeah, no, great one.
So
Can I?
think ahead, plan your career, but be ready to change tracks very quickly. You don't want to be a Nokia, a BlackBerry, or a Kodak. You want to be a Nat Vora.
I was just going to say, Nat, I beat you because in 1992, my thesis in accounting was on sustainability accounting. So that was many years ago. No, some really great points there coming out about what you should be doing. And remember, the whole purpose of having a panel is to get those diverse views. So Vikas, in what you said, domain knowledge is going to be important, but also looking at the future, sustainability is very much it. Is it going to be it in 10 years' time? Perhaps. Maybe AI is going to come in. Maybe more other things are going to come in, and we need to keep our eyes open. Last question that I want to end, I guess, end the session with is, what is the one area that we haven't covered so far that you think is very important for our audience to think about when it comes to ensuring that they can succeed globally? So Sunil, I'd like to start with you. One area that we haven't discussed.
Yeah, I think one of the very important area to be successful globally is the communication and language aspect of that. Now,
can you explain just
yeah,
very briefly?
Speaking a local language, understanding a local language is very, very different than communicating with the people. So if you are living in a foreign country, or if you're going to do business with a foreign country or a foreign partner, you need to understand basics of their language. You need to greet them in their language, create a rapport, create a trust, and try to understand that language not as a impossible thing to do, but over a period of time, because language teaches you culture, and culture creates a trust, and trust will eventually take you to the final outcome, which is your success.
Brilliant. This is probably where I should say, "Mane Gujarati nathi avadtu." So for our Gujarati people here. Okay, Vikas, what would you say?
I would recommend people all here, I mean, all young chartered accountants, SMPs, to focus on networking. So one element that you should all be good at is networking, because networking in today's world, we always call it, it's a net worth of a person. It does not matter how much money you have in your bank account, but when there is an issue, if you're connected to the right person, you will be out of that issue. So focus very well on networking. And networking is just not about collecting cards. It's an art in itself. So you have to slowly understand it and build on, with the people that you have over time networked. So this is what I would suggest.
Brilliant. And Nat, finally, what would you say?
So actually, I'm going to change from what my answer was. I'm going to say the one thing I'm going to tell everybody, especially people sitting here all these years as chartered accountants, one thing that we have thought of is we are experts in auditing, accounting, and valuations. Well, the world has changed, right? We need to do many more things than that. So think outside the cube, not just the box. Things outside the cube. Be prepared for innovative changes coming about. AI and machine learning. I always tell people my age, really, most of them, CFOs, have no awareness of AI or very little. And I try to keep up with that. And I suggest every one of this in the room, of you in the room, please do not ignore it. Learn about it. But not only that, anything that could be perceived as a threat to you and your profession tomorrow should be your competitor, not what you see across the room on the other side running another firm. You must always think outside the cube and keep focusing on those areas that you think you don't have the expertise in today and could become the thing of tomorrow. AI, machine learning, ESG, I can give 1,000 such examples.
Great.
Like I said, you don't want to be a Nokia, you don't want to be a Kodak, or you don't want to be a BlackBerry. You want to be different.
All right, thank you. Just to end with one comment, panel, you've been absolutely fantastic. Some really great examples. I think the thing to remember is none of us are always going to have all the knowledge, but the chances are the person sitting next to you may be able to help you. So I'm going to go to the point that Vikas said. This network that you have within ICAI is fantastic. The network of chartered accountants worldwide is fantastic. Reach out and learn. And remember what Ratan Tata said. If you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vandana. In fact, to this audience which is seated here, I thought I should also share some 2 minutes of what I have experienced. Majority of the audience seated here are all chartered accountants in practice. Let me tell them that no one works on holidays. In the West, outside India, no one works on holidays. Everyone takes a holiday, and then when they are on a holiday, they don't work, they don't take your telephone, they don't call back, and no one works after office hours. They don't take your call. You can't call them after office hours. And during office hours, there's no personal communication, no mobile phones, no WhatsApp, nothing at all. And very important now, if the last due date, the compliance date is a holiday, be rest assured, your chartered accountant outside India, your professional outside India is not going to work for you, because for him, it's a holiday. You should have come to him a day before the due date. And why am I telling it here now? Pramod Jainji, Dheeraj Bhai, Prasanna Kumar, Dayanivas, all council colleagues are seated here. October 31st, 2024 is Diwali. Don't come back to the ICAI and say, get us an extension. 29th October is Dhanteras. Don't tweet Dheeraj Khandelwal, Dheeraj, please get an extension. Tell your client, my office hours is closing on October 28th, 5 p.m. That's it. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw curtains on this session, I stand here with immense gratitude and a deep sense of appreciation. First and foremost, our heartfelt thanks go to esteemed moderator for orchestrating this session with adept stewardship, to our CCM, ICAI, CAP Rajendra Kumar, whose support and guidance have been invaluable in making this panel discussion a success. A profound expression of gratitude is extended to our distinguished panelists, whose expertise and prospectiveness have enriched our discourse. In recognition of the invaluable insights shared by the versatile moderator and eminent panelist, I have the honor to request a momentous occasion on the stage, requesting CA Dayanivas Sharma, CCM ICAI, to present a token of appreciation in the form of memento to CA Vandana Saxena, Poria. Requesting CA Prasanna Kumar D, CCM ICAI, to present a token of gratitude in the form of memento to our expert panelist, Mr. Sunil Deshmukh.
Yes, I'll see you thank for money.
Requesting CA Pramod Jain, CCM ICAI, to present a token of appreciation in the form of memento to our distinguished panelist, Dr. Vikas S. Chaturvedi. Requesting CA Dayanivas Sharma, CCM ICAI, to present a token of gratitude in the form of memento to our honored panelist, Mr. Nat Vora.
And I speak on all three problems. All the programs and awards should go to Vandana for making us look good. And I'd like to thank all of you for having the patience to wait there.
This memento is a sincere gesture to convey our appreciation for the expertise and vision they have shared with us today. Thank you everyone for joining on to the next session after a quick pause.
Thank you so much.